Yo, what is everyone? I'm Chris and we're Emma Sauce here, and today we're bringing you the entire first season of our series on What If Marvel's What If continued, where we continue each episode and see how it would play out in the entirety of the MCU timeline, with having some exceptions like the Doctor Strange episode and some of the other episodes. But we did relatively most of them, I think like 6 out of the 9, where we just continue what the episode ended off and see how the changes affect the entire MCU timeline. Other than that, guys, just sit back, grab some snacks, and relax, and just hear throughout the whole first season of What If Marvel's What If continued.
What if Marvel's What If about Captain Carter continued? So, we'll begin where the episode ended off, which was Nick Fury and Clint seeing Captain Carter coming outside the portal. They explain to her that years have passed, and now she's in the year 2012, where the world is ending. They begin to head away when the portal opens up once more, and Loki would step out. They would all try to fight him off, but Loki, being the god of mischief, he will end up victorious, just as usual, and take over Clint and Dr. Eric Selvig as he leaves with the Tesseract. Carter would escape with Nick Fury out of the base before it would collapse. Loki would still escape knowing how dangerous the Tesseract is. Carter would join the Avengers to help out. Carter would arrive at the SHIELD's base to be introduced to Black Widow and Dr. Bruce Banner. They will talk and enter in the SHIELD carrier. They would all be sitting around listening to Nick Fury when Tony Stark would enter with armored bodyguards surrounding him. Now, before we continue with this, here's a little backstory for Tony. So, as we saw in the episode, Howard created the first Iron Man suit. As the years pass, he would continue working on making more suits to help out in the war. It took him a while, but he figured out a way to power the suits without the Tesseract, as he created the Iron Legion. And take note of that because they would be a recurring character throughout this series. He would upgrade the suits time to time, and even made suits that didn't need anyone to be in it. But there were only a small amount of them, but then stopped after he was assassinated back in 1991. So the Iron Legion hasn't been upgraded in a while, but are still functional until Tony took over to work on tech even further. Now with Tony's story, he will still be attacked as normal, but the difference being that he would have been captured with some of the older version of the Iron Legions. The 10 Ring members would still force him to make the Jericho missile. Tony would create a much better first suit in the cave, with already having experience in building the Iron Man suit. He would escape by having a bit more trouble with having to deal with the other suits. Good news is that he doesn't have the shrapnel in his heart, so he wouldn't need his arc reactor in his chest. Things would go on, and Tony would stop making the Iron Legion after realizing that it could cause mass destruction. As he chills around his house, Pepper would show him that terrorist gangs has possessions of his iron armor. Tony would use the Iron Legion suits to head over there and take his tech back, as he is faced with a challenge since the Iron Legion suit isn't the best, but he manages to destroy all suits they have as he heads back home. After this, Tony will create his own personal suit, and it will be much better than the one he had in canon, and go after any other group that would have his suits. Obadiah Stane will plot to go against Tony, as he would have some special Iron Legion suits by his side. It would end with Tony fighting against Obadiah's own Iron Legion, as Tony having a much upgraded suit will become victorious, and Obadiah will be in jail. After that, he will begin making the Iron Legion once more, but they will only work for Tony and not the government. In Iron Man 2, Tony wouldn't get the virus as he doesn't have an arc reactor. He would be much more responsible with his suits, so Rhodey wouldn't steal a suit, so no War Machine. Tony would easily defeat Whiplash, with his bodyguards being multiple Iron Man suits. Nick would offer him to be an actual Avenger and not just a consultant. Hammer Tech would try to build the suits, and Tony would see that Hammer Tech is close, so he would go to their base and destroy all the suits, not letting them remake his creation, which will make Hammer Tech go out of business. Back to the present, Captain Carter would go to Germany to face off Loki. Iron Man would arrive as he meets up with Captain Carter. Loki would be captured, and Thor would arrive, and Tony and Thor would fight, but with Tony putting up a better fight. Things would go on the same. Phil would still bite the dust. Nick would use Phil's card to inspire the Avengers to assemble. They will all fight in the Battle of New York. Or the multiple battles of New York. The first Battle of New York. With the difference of the Iron Legion helping out. And with the nuke, Tony wouldn't have to risk himself as he just sends one of the Iron Legion to bring it to space, as this will change Tony from getting PTSD and the Avengers winning much more easily. After the first Battle of New York, Tony wouldn't have gotten PTSD, so he wouldn't make many other Iron Man suits, and just focus on his personal one, making it much more powerful sooner. With the Iron Legion, he would upgrade them close to his personal ones, and make some special suits for different situations. He would also have a safety feature that if he loses control of his Iron Legion suits, he could blow them all up if he ever needs to. Tony would not reveal his address, which would lead to him never going to Tennessee, but while trying to deal with the Mandarin, Tony would hunt him down using the Iron Legion to help him out. Man, he's just using the Iron Legion for everything now. Rhodes would also help out Tony and even use one of the Iron Legion suits. They will end up in Florida, finding out that he is just a paid actor. Killian would try to find Tony and Rhodey at the warehouse, with Killian and his army versus Tony, Rhodey, and the Iron Legion. This fight will be intense and cause major damage, but in the end, with Tony and his superior tech, they would end Killian and his army. And with that, it's the end of Iron Man 3. Now, for Thor, The Dark World. That stays the same. Captain America! Without the Winter Soldier. Now this movie will be much shorter. Sam would still be the Falcon, but have a smaller role in the timeline. Peggy would meet up with a much older Steve, and Steve wouldn't have a family, but would be happy to see Peggy again, as they both catched up with each other. Fury would still be attacked as normal, and end up at Peggy's place, which would end up normally. Bucky never died, and didn't end up being the Winter Soldier. Nick would lay low, while Carter would figure out who was working for Hydra, while being in S.H.I.E.L.D. She wouldn't be wanted, since Nick Fury never died. Carter, Nat, Sam, Nick, and Hills would all work together to blow up the carrier as normal, without any problems, since there's no Winter Soldier. And with that, we conclude Captain Carter without the Winter Soldier. Now, for my favorite movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. It says the same. Avengers, Age of the Iron Legion, because Christ's sake, they're everywhere. Things will play out the same when they try to take back the scepter, but with the help of the Iron Legion, Tony would go inside the building with a few of his Iron Legion suits, so Wanda wouldn't try to use a spell on him. Quicksilver would have a harder time messing with the Avengers, with also having to watch out for the Iron Legion. It's like everyone has to watch out for them. They go back to the Avengers Tower. Tony and Bruce will still try to make Ultron during the party. Carter would be able to wield Mjolnir, then Ultron would attack the Avengers with the entire Iron Legion, but before anything could happen, they all fly high and blow up thanks to Tony's safety feature. They would be upset at Tony and Bruce, but much less since the problem was dealt with fast. Wanda and Quicksilver meet up with Ultron, and they would Wanda and Quicksilver will meet up with Ultron, and they would head for the Vibranium. So will the Avengers. Their fight goes on, and Wanda would put spells on Thor, Black Widow, Carter, and Hulk. Carter would see a younger Steve as they begin to dance as they promised each other for. Tony would have to fight Hulk, but there is no Hulkbuster armor. But wait, Tony has something better. He has the Hulk Iron Legion Busters, and there's 3 of them! As they all would gang up on Hulk, and they would knock him out so much easier, plus Hulk causes much less damage than usual, but still destroys some of the city. They stay at Clint's house, and things play out the same, but less conflict. Thor would leave. Carter, Nat, Clint would go after Ultron, and get the body. Nat will be captured, Vision will still be made, and the battle in Sokovia will go around the same, with the exception of Tony's special Iron Legion helping out and even preventing the death of Quicksilver, and Carter using Thor's hammer a bit during the battle. And Ant-Man stays the same. Yay. Captain America Civil War. So, there is no Civil War. But let me explain. So when Crossbones was about to blow up, the Iron Legion takes Crossbones far away before he blows up, which prevents the Sokovia Accords, and there's no Bucky problem. And the Avengers stick together. Doctor Strange would also stay the same. And Guardians of the Galaxy would also stay the same. Spider-Man Homecoming. This movie will go the same, without any scenes of Iron Man and no Stark suit. Unfortunately. So yeah, the plot would go the same, but Spider-Man wouldn't have a mentor or someone to look up to, and he will be his own hero. He will be using his homemade suit during the beginning, but eventually he will make a better suit, resembling a more classical Spider-Man suit. During the battle on the boat, Peter would be there fighting, but the Iron Legion would also arrive, and one of the suits gets damaged. Good. Peter spots the suit and takes it with him, as he figured it wouldn't be a good idea to leave it there, lying around. As he's taking it, trying to find a place he can throw it away, he begins to tamper with the suit and gets ideas on making gadgets. He then delivers the rest of the suit to the Avengers Tower, webbing it up against a wall. The rest of the movie goes on similarly, but the Vulture doesn't know Peter's identity, and he's taken out. Post-credits scene. Back on the Avengers Tower, Tony asks Friday for a report on the Iron Legion, and Friday states that there's a suit missing, as Tony asks for the coordinates on the missing suit. Friday reveals the location of the missing suit. Queens, New York. Thor Ragnarok. It stays the same. I mean, I'm glad it's a good movie. And Black Panther also stays the same, with the exception of T'Challa's dad being alive. So two Black Panther, no, I'm just kidding. Avengers Infinity War. My second favorite movie of the MCU. Now Infinity War is a completely different movie. Hulk would still be sent back to Earth and warn Doctor Strange that Thanos is coming. Doctor Strange will go to get Tony and he will be filled in on what's about to happen. Tony would assemble the Avengers, which consists of Captain Carter, Black Widow, Falcon, Wanda, Quicksilver, Vision, War Machine, as he finally got his own suit, and Tony gives Banner a suit of his own. The Black Order arrives at New York, as every supervillain does. And the Iron Legion begin to evacuate the city, as the Avengers begin to brawl it out with the Black Order. As he's currently on a field trip, Peter notices the alien ship and suits up as he heads over there. Spider-Man arrives and sees the Avengers as he freaks out a bit. He begins to help out the heroes battling the Black Order, as he also introduces himself to everyone. The Avengers and Spider-Man end up victorious against the battle with the Black Order. Banner, however, reveals to everyone that none of them were Thanos, but just Thanos' goons, and Spider-Man questions who's Thanos. As Banner's explaining everything to Spider-Man, Doctor Strange looks through every possible scenario to see if they're victorious in any of them. Everyone looks at Doctor Strange to see if he's okay. Then Doctor Strange stops and reveals to them that he was looking through every possible outcome to see how many they would win. Tony asks how many did he see, as Doctor Strange reveals that he saw one. They all head to the Avengers Tower, and Peter begins to freak out as he's stepping into the building of Earth's mightiest heroes. Banner begins to explain everything about Thanos' plan and all of the 6 Infinity Stones. In space, Thor and the Guardians have the same events play out. Back on Earth, the Avengers are thinking of a plan to beat Thanos. Captain Carter makes a call to King T'Chaka, explaining their situation and asks for their help. King T'Chaka agrees to help them and sends T'Challa, the Black Panther, and his army. While this is happening, Thor gets his Stormbreaker and they call in the Guardians, telling them to go to Earth. Thor arrives on Earth in the Avengers Tower, meeting up with the Avengers, and introduces his new friends, the Rabbit and Tree. Rocket and Groot introduce themselves seriously this time. Well, I don't know about Groot, but they do say that backup would arrive soon, so... Hooray! Tony will start to forge armor for the Avengers as extra protection, and some for the Guardians when they arrive. Then a portal opens up, and an enormous ship arrives on top of New York. The ship starts blasting at New York, destroying a good amount of the city. Then the Mad Titan Thanos appears, wielding the gauntlet with 4 Infinity Stones. Power, space, reality, and soul. Then, the Avengers ready up and begin to head out. Spider-Man starts to freak out, saying that wouldn't it be better to wait for the backup to arrive. But Captain Carter will go up to Peter, calming him down, and giving him a similar speech that Hawkeye gave to Wanda in Age of Ultron, as he tells Peter that once he walks out of those doors, he would be an Avenger. Then all the Avengers will go out and face off against Thanos. Carter will step up and speak to Thanos, as she states that they will not let him erase half of the universe. But Thanos takes a step closer, stating that he is inevitable. Then the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy arrive, and Rocket will be happy, but then asks where's Gamora, as Quill looks at Rocket, then faces to Thanos, and points that he killed her. Then Black Panther and his army arrive at New York, and the Iron Legion forms up. As everyone gathers up, Captain Carter tightens her shield brace as she says, "Avengers, assemble." As they all charge at Thanos' army and begin to fight in the city of New York. Everyone gives it their all, fighting till their last breath. The fight goes on for a long time, and Captain Carter, Iron Man, and Thor make their way towards Thanos as they face off against him. They all fight and try to get the gauntlet off Thanos. Captain Carter gets close and tries to get the gauntlet away, but Thanos activates the Power Stone and breaks her shield. Iron Man begins to shoot beams at Thanos, but he uses the Reality Stone to turn the beams into bombs and sends them back to Iron Man. Iron Man is hit and surrounded by smoke, but as the smoke clears, Thanos grabs onto Iron Man's face and rips off the helmet, but Tony uses his nanotech to form another one. One of the suits from the Iron Legion arrives to help Tony and charges at Thanos, but with one swing from Thanos with the Power Stone activated, destroys the suit in an instant. Let's go, baby! What a tragedy. Thanos gets ready to kill Tony with the Power Stone, but is then interrupted by Thor as he blasts him with a lightning strike, hurting Thanos a lot. But Thanos turns them into metal beams, and there are a lot of them as he sends them down towards Thor. Thor gets out of the way, dodging them all, but Thanos used them as a distraction to attack Thor with the Power Stone. But Thor manages to dodge that punch from Thanos. However, Thanos manages to get Thor's Stormbreaker away from him, and Thor tries to hold off Thanos. But he isn't strong enough. But then Thanos gets hit by a lightning blast. But it wasn't from Thor, it was from Captain Carter, as she wields Stormbreaker and chops off Thanos' arm that was wielding the gauntlet. Thanos is in pain, and Thor quickly reacts as he goes to get the gauntlet, but Thanos is still grabbing onto Thor, not letting him go, and then throws him at Captain Carter. Thanos quickly picks up the Reality Stone and makes a new arm that wields the gauntlet once again. Thanos gets ready to attack once again, but is shot in the back by Star-Lord. He turns around as he charges at Star-Lord, ready to attack, but Doctor Strange's cape wraps around Thanos' gauntlet and pulls him away from Star-Lord. Thanos ends up ripping off the cape, but then Doctor Strange uses his magic to fight off Thanos. Then Spider-Man starts webbing up Thanos' arm that is wielding the gauntlet, as he tries desperately to get it off. But Thanos takes the Power Stone away from the gauntlet and throws a punch towards Peter, but luckily, Peter managed to dodge that punch. However, in him dodging that punch, he let go of the gauntlet and Thanos gets a good punch on Peter with the hand wielding the gauntlet, with no Power Stone. Spider-Man's armor breaks from the impact and is launched back, and Captain Carter goes to Spider-Man, checking if he's okay. Then Thanos picks up a piece of Captain Carter's broken shield and throws it at Captain Carter. But before the shield hits her, Peter pushes Captain Carter out of the way, and instead of her getting hit, Peter's the one to take it as the shield piece impales his shoulder. Seeing this, Captain Carter would charge at Thanos. Thanos would attack her, but she dodges his attacks and wraps herself around his neck. Then Doctor Strange will use his magic to keep Thanos in place. Tony will be blasting Thanos in the chest. Star-Lord will be holding Thanos' regular arm down. Spider-Man will slowly get up and pull out the shield from his shoulder and web up Thanos' gauntlet arm and pulls it as hard as he can. Then Thor, wielding Stormbreaker, will chop off Thanos' gauntlet arm and stab Thanos' chest with Stormbreaker, as he says he'll die for that. Peter Quill would scream at Thanos, telling him that he'll pay for killing Gamora, and Thanos looks at Quill, saying he had to, as Thor chops off his head immediately after those words came out of Thanos' mouth. The rest of the Avengers will finish off Thanos' army. Carter will go up to Peter, saying that she is proud, and that he is a true Avenger. Tony, Doctor Strange, and Thor will be thinking on what to do with the stones, as Thor keeps the Power Stone, and Doctor Strange will send the rest to the far corners of the universe. With this, the Avengers are victorious, and head back to the Avengers Tower. To each pharma. The Guardians leave, but Thor doesn't go with them. Thor stays with the Avengers as they keep the Power Stone secure in Avengers Tower. Doctor Strange goes back to his place. Peter Parker is now officially an Avenger. Black Panther and the remainder of his army go back to Wakanda. And the Earth is saved, thanks to the Avengers and the Iron Legion. But no one cares about them. Also, the movie Ant-Man and the Wasp stays the same, with the only difference being that Scott isn't on house arrest, Hank Pym isn't mad at him for working with the Avengers, and they don't get dusted in the end, so they're able to pull Scott out of the quantum realm. Captain Marvel stays the same, and finally, Avengers Endgame. The Iron Legion betrays the... No, I'm playing, there is no Avenger. Let's ponder the question, what if Marvel's What If continued? Now, we will start off the story where it was left off at. Now we see T'Challa and the Ravagers crew battling Ego on Earth. Now, during this, it caught the eye of two people, Tony Stark and Nick Fury. So, first movie, Iron Man. During this episode, it took place during the Iron Man movie. Now, let's say this is during the time Tony is already Iron Man. He would see this battle and suit up to go aid. When he arrives, he is greeted by an attack from Ego as he is sent flying, but would send over some repulsors to fight back. He then would fly by T'Challa asking him what is happening and who he is. T'Challa quickly explains that he is trying to save their planet from being consumed by Ego. Tony would spot Ego and send missiles at him, but would see that it does nothing to Ego, as Tony then would shoot his repulsors, which would actually affect him, and T'Challa complements Tony's tech. The battle would get worse, as then a helicarrier appears, shooting at Ego. Then Black Widow and Hawkeye would appear, trying to aid the group fighting Ego, while Nick would be watching. With their combined forces, they are able to finish off Ego with a combination blast from T'Challa, Tony, and Peter. After the battle was concluded, T'Challa would invite both Peter and Tony to his group, as they would accept, also offering the same to Nat and Clint, but they say it's out of their pay grade. Before they leave, Nick would appear talking to both T'Challa and Tony about the Avenger Initiative. They wouldn't decline the offer, but they would still be going out to space, but T'Challa would give a device to Nick that would be able to call him whenever the Earth would ever be in danger. Tony would call Pepper telling her that he will be going on a long vacation and she will lead the Stark Industries while he is gone. Nick would also give Tony the box that belonged to his father so that he's able to create a new element. Iron Man 2. Now, this movie is completely different, mainly because, the main character isn't even there, so we will have to separate stories about what happens on Earth and him in space. Now, with Hammer Tech, without Tony, their tech would surpass, since there will be no competition, so his suits would end up in the army, but not really be working correctly, with which then he meets Vanko, and together they would create the suits similar to how it was in the movie. But in the end, Vanko would betray Justin Hammers, and he was still on revenge on the Stark family, so he would end up attacking Stark Industries. But there wouldn't be anyone to stop them. In fear, Pepper would be afraid to go to the company without having Happy by her at all times. Rhodey would try to comfort her, and then decides to take on Vanko using Tony's Mark II suit. But before he would head to Vanko, he is met with Nick Fury and they would have to talk. Nick says that it wouldn't be wise for him to do this all alone, so he would let Rhodes become a SHIELD agent, working closely with Nat and Clint. SHIELD would upgrade the suits, and then all three of them would fight off Vanko. But what they weren't expecting was the army of suits he had, and they would definitely be overwhelmed and have to retreat, but be hurt. This really hit the confidence of Rhodes, saying that they will need Tony. As for now, they decide to remain hidden. Now in space, with Tony, he has gotten really well with the group, especially Thanos, as they joke around being glad that they aren't on different sides. And with the help of others, his suit will become fairly more advanced than what it would be. Think of his suit being similar to the space armor that was in Iron Man Armored Adventures. He also would have found a new element and replaced his arc reactor so he wouldn't get the virus. They wouldn't contact many planets and be in many different battles, even finding about the Mind Stone. With his smarts, he is soon able to create advanced tech for everyone else, making a suit for T'Challa and Peter. Thor. Sadly, this movie, or any Thor movie for that matter, wouldn't happen. Now, let me explain. The Collector has not only Thor's hammer, but also Hela's helmet, and in order to even meet Hela, he would have to kill Odin. So most likely Odin, Thor, Loki, and Hela, and the entirety of Asgard, is dead. Or maybe even completely destroyed. So yeah, there won't be any Thor movie or Gods on Earth anytime soon. Captain America, the first Avenger. The movie would remain the same besides the ending. Now, the Collector would find the Ice Steve and would take him and the shield. He would defrost him and take his shield and hold him captive. Now, Steve would be a prisoner until T'Challa would free everyone like he did in the episode. Steve's mission is not to get back home, as he can tell he is very far. He would grab his shield and then see many people try to lift the hammer that no one can seem to pick up, as Steve would attempt to do so, and he would actually be worthy enough to wield it, and he would possess the power of Thor. More people would be fighting over the weapons that the Collector had, and then Steve would see the Tesseract and would take that as he grabbed it, and he would see a portal open up as he would carefully enter, but then he would be at a different planet. Now, Steve would still have a good heart and he would begin helping out planets that needed saving. So he would kind of be doing that, what Captain Marvel does, but he still wants to focus on trying to get back home. But for now, he will be the Liberator in space, helping any planets that needed saving. Avengers. Now, there won't be any Avenger movie as of right now, but we can do an update on Earth. So this would cover the movies Avengers, Iron Man 3, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and Thor 2. So, during the time of the original Avengers, Vanko would have conquered most of the US with his suits, but would get backlash from three other groups, Killian and his army, Hydra and the Winter Soldier, and a few members of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now let's explain what had happened and how each group got involved. Killian saw that Vanko had the same hatred for Stark and tried to have a team up to conquer the states, but Vanko refused, saying that he didn't want a partner or lackeys. This angered Killian, as they got into an altercation, and decided to attack each other's groups. Now with Hydra, with their mission in the second Captain America, they would still try to go with it, but without Steve to stop it. It was up to Rhodes, Nat, Clint, Hulk, and Falcon. As of now, this was the Avengers group. Jesus Christ. Now when Hydra has the helicarrier in the sky, the Avengers split into teams, Hulk on one, with Falcon and Clint on another, and Rhodes and Nat on the final one. Hulk managed to destroy the one he was on, and would then aid with the one with Rhodes and Nat, but unlucky, Clint and Sam had to face off against the Winter Soldier. This fight is intense, but very one-sided, as Winter Soldier is able to deal with them. This fight was almost lost, but with a sacrifice, it was won. The Winter Soldier was beating Sam and ripping his wings off, but before he could end it, Clint managed to shoot an arrow on the side of the Winter Soldier's stomach, which wounded him, but he then rushes at Clint and begins to fight him, being in range as he punches him with full force, and this hurts Clint as he is sent flying, crashing to a jet. The Winter Soldier begins to walk over to Clint to prepare to end it, but Sam will get a gun and shoot the Winter Soldier as it would bring his fate. Sam would rush over to Clint, calling for backup, as Clint is seriously injured, but the time he got to Clint, he was already gone, taken from the major punch that damaged his insides, which caused his death. Sam forgot to take down the helicarrier, and the helicarrier managed to begin the shooting on Earth, and killed close to 1 million people before the rest of the Avengers were able to destroy it. Many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were killed because of Hydra's mission, and sadly, Hydra wasn't taken down, but did lose the Winter Soldier. Nick and Hales will have a secret base that the Avengers could hide out, but most of them think to themselves if they can even change anything. They take Clint's loss majorly. Rhodes tells Nick that they need Tony back here, but when they say that, something on their scanner picks up a high voltage of energy. Over to Steve, he has finally made it back to Earth, but not alone, as he is currently fighting the leader of the Dark Elves, Malekith. I don't know if this is actually Malekith, I'm sorry. As he is trying to prevent the events of Thor the Dark World, but with Steve replacing Thor. Now, Steve is kind of at a disadvantage, as he isn't a god like Thor with the few years that he had with Mjolnir, but he became good with the weapon and combined it with his shield, so he is able to take down Malekith with his tactical fighting skills and is able to contain the Reality Stone. So, Steve has 2 stones with him. Steve would fly to New York, but see it in destruction with all the robots and fire people, and then sees a helicarrier that is run by Hydra, as they see Cap and try taking him down. But easily, Steve destroyed the helicarrier as he is confused on what is going on. But then a nearby portal opens up, as out comes Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme. He would enter with them and meet the Avengers for the first time, as they're all in shock to realize that it was the famous Captain America, as they asked him where he has been, but Steve nervously laughs, saying that he was in space. but then explains what has happened, and he asks if he was the reason as to why they couldn't win the war. But Nick catches Steve up to speed. Now, quickly, let's explain why Doctor Strange is here early. The Sorcerer Supreme, seeing all the destruction and battle on Earth, decided to look for Strange early, in case he gets killed if she waits longer. It took a while for convincing, but Strange would go to see, just to know if she was telling the truth. After learning the mystic arts, he begins to train under her, and becomes a much more experienced sorcerer. Nick finally sees hope, after seeing these two powerhouses joining the Avenger team. Age of Ultron. Now with Ultron not really existing, it wouldn't be a movie. Well, not yet anyways, and not on Earth. So during this time, the Avengers will begin their takeover to bring peace back to the US, and take out most of the threat, with the two new members carrying the team and doing most of the damage. And around the year, they would have cleaned up everything, but then also begin preparing for another threat. But we will talk about that later. Now during the same time, T'Challa and the others would continue to have their adventures, and Tony would be great friends with T'Challa. During this time, as Tony found an Infinity Stone, he actually used it once and got the idea of creating a suit of armor around the world, but not just one world, but every world in the galaxy. T'Challa dismisses the idea and says that it isn't logical and could also bring destruction and chaos as he compares it to Thanos, as everyone laughs about it jokingly as Tony also laughs, but secretly this hurts Tony, but decides to go on with the idea on his own and secretly creates Ultron. But there's a few things that changed now. Tony will be able to build Ultron on his own, in this what-if scenario, as he is much smarter than before, and Ultron will be built with the more futuristic parts, so Ultron would be advanced. One night, while Tony and the Ravagers were partying, Ultron would attack similar to how he did in the normal MCU movie. The Ravagers would try to fight Ultron, but would be very easily dealt with, as Tony, Peter, and T'Challa are the last ones left, and would try to fight him all together, but they would get beat. Ultron holds a Power Stone and puts it into his own armor to contain the power as he flies away in space, with him having two stones. T'Challa does get angry at Tony for going against his wishes, and says that now they will have to end this, and this breaks their friendship apart, and Tony would end up leaving the group and begin heading back to Earth. Ant-Man. This movie would slightly stay the same, but there wouldn't be an Ant-Man, but an Ant-Woman. Hope would end up taking the mantle of Ant-Man, as her father was one of the many that were killed during the Battle of Hydra, taking over shields. During the years, she would grieve, but also find notes about the Pym particle, and would end up becoming Ant-Woman, and would do her best in fighting for what's right. And that is how later on she will meet up with the Avengers, seeing what they fight for, and would meet Nick Fury, to get herself and joining the Avengers. Sadly, no Scott. Civil War. There is no Civil War. Doctor Strange. Now, this movie wouldn't really be called Doctor Strange, because the Avengers would assemble to fight off Caecilius? I don't know how to say that, to be honest. Don't blame me in the comments. Now, this would be a lot easier, and Caecilius won't be able to summon Dormammu since he faces against not only just the Avengers, but a much more stronger and experienced Doctor Strange, and this means the Sorcerer Supreme survives. Spider-Man Homecoming. Finally, to my favorite Avenger, Peter Parker. That's Chris's words, not mine. You already know me. Tony Stark is the GOAT! So his journey as Spider-Man will be kind of normal, as there will be no vultures since there was no Battle of New York. This Spider-Man will be a bit less chatty and jokingly overall, a bit more serious fighter, not pulling his punch. No, I'm kidding, he's still pulling his punch. But still in experience, he would do the small deeds and eventually get the attention of Nick Fury. And the Avengers, seeing that this kid could have some potential, Nick would ask Strange to teleport Spider-Man here, and he would do so, and Spider-Man would freak out, as he's still a fan of the Avengers. He asks why they want him here, as Nick explains that he wants to offer Spider-Man a spot on the Avengers, but he would definitely need some training and guidance of being a hero. Now with this inexperienced Spider-Man, he would join in without any hesitation, as this will make him an official Avenger. Black Panther. This movie would have a completely different start. Now, T'Chaka would still be alive, and at this point T'Challa would be heading back to Earth to go find Tony, but also to stop by his home. When he arrives and sees his family, he and his father would have a serious talk about him becoming the king of Wakanda, and this worries T'Challa, as he didn't plan to become king, but then the doors are slammed open, as Killmonger would appear in front of everyone and challenge the king to take the throne. Now, since T'Chaka would be too old, T'Challa would fight for him. This fight would be very one-sided, with T'Challa easily beating Killmonger. But T'Challa would spare Killmonger, but when T'Challa has his back turned, Killmonger would try to stab T'Challa, but Peter Quill would shoot Killmonger before he is able to kill T'Challa. T'Challa thanks Peter for looking out for him. T'Chaka would pass the mantle of Black Panther, and T'Challa would take it up, but keep parts of his old uniform, like his purple jacket. And then he would walk over to Peter and ask him if he can continue the mantle of Star-Lord, and Peter would accept it and would become the new Star-Lord. Then T'Challa would decide to stay on Earth for a while, since he does still want to look for Tony, and the Ravagers would also stay with T'Challa. Infinity War. Tony would finally land on Earth and fly over to New York. He is confused on what had happened and would try to go find Pepper or Happy, but to no avail. Even Stark Industries is gone, as he would try to find info and he would see all that had happened when he left. Then nearby, Rhodey would see another Iron Man suit and realize that it is Tony. He flew over to Tony and they would have a sour reunion, as Rhodey would bring over Tony to the Avenger hideout as he met everyone. Nick is somewhat upset seeing Tony as he tells him what had happened and how he could have used them years ago, and catches him up to speed on everything that occurred. And Tony felt terrible that he could have aided them, but then he remembers about Ultron as he warns everyone and tells them about Ultron, and now he is trying to get all 6 Infinity Stones, as he already owns the Mind and Power Stones. Strange and Steve gets worried as they have 3 of them here on Earth, with it being the Space, Time, and Reality Stones. Tony explains with a disturbed face that he is the reason that the whole universe is at stake, and everyone is shocked, but before anything could happen, Nick gets a notification as he looks over to see the Ravagers as he thinks of them as a threat, but Tony notifies them as it was the people he was with. Quickly the Avengers all head to the Ravagers. Tony would see T'Challa and would see T'Challa's new armor, and seeing Peter becoming the new Star-Lord, as he quickly tells T'Challa that they must all join forces and prepare for Ultron's invasion as they all head to Wakanda. T'Challa would explain what is happening to his family, as he will prepare any defenses and army for Ultron. The Avengers prepare as Tony would upgrade his and Rhodey's suits. Tony would think of the idea of using the stones against Ultron, but Strange would shut it down, saying that the stones are too powerful of a weapon to use and could cause more chaos. Spider-Man is kind of worried as this is the first big battle and it could be his last, but Fury would give a prep talk that is now or never and prove them that he is worthy of being an Avenger. Fury would also pull out a device and call for Captain Marvel. Now, here's the full lineup of the Avengers, plus the Ravagers. Black Panther, Star-Lord, Nebula, Thanos, Yondu, Korath, Tony, Rhodey, Captain America, Black Widow, Falcon, Hulk, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, Captain Marvel, and Ant-Woman. I am not going to put all those characters on screen, you probably know who they are. Now yes, there's a lot of less heroes than it was in a normal timeline, but they were prepared and the entire Wakanda forces, plus all the sorcerers. Then T'Challa will be notified that something has entered the planet, as he prepared the defenses of Wakanda by using the force field as everyone gathered outside. Ultron speaks, saying that they shouldn't even bother with trying to fight against him, as they're all puny. He easily breaks through the barrier like it was glass. With this, he sends his mini Ultron-bot army as the fight will begin. Only Tony, Cap, T'Challa, and Captain Marvel would fight Ultron, being the powerhouses, while everyone else will be fighting his army. Even with all 4 of them ganging up on Ultron, he's able to fight them all off with ease, using the stones he got to use. They are doing all they can, using combined forces to fight off Ultron, while everyone else is fighting the surplus army of Ultron, but soon people begin falling against the Ultron bots. Strange is defeating many Ultron bots, but one would try to sneak up behind him to stab him, but is pushed away by the Ancient One, as she would get stabbed and killed. Strange would destroy the bot and rush over to the Ancient One, but she was taken by a fatal wound. The fight would continue, but the Wakandan army and the sorcerers were falling fast. Ultron would push everyone away and then engage in a pulse blaster battle with Tony as they're in a similar energy, but then it would cause a big blast that pushes everyone as Tony blacked out. He would wake up to hear many screams and see that they are in a losing battle. He looks around to see many dead soldiers, but also dead Avengers, like Natasha, Falcon, Nebula, Spider-Man, and Woman, Korath, Peter Quill, and more of T'Challa's crew. He prepares to go back into the fight, but he would be grabbed by Strange, who is about to die. He told Tony to get to the other stones, as that may be the only way to win this battle, as he gives Tony the Time Stone. In his hand, he opens up a hole in his suit that absorbs the power of the Time Stone, as it is shown that Tony created his suit to contain the Infinity Stones, as he begins to fly to Wakanda to find the other two stones. Thanos tries to fight off the Ultron bots, but is soon overtaken and killed. Hulk is fighting Ultron alone, but is quickly taken out by a blast by Ultron that goes through the Hulk, ending him. T'Challa and Yondu would try to take out Ultron together, but they wouldn't put any stress on Ultron as he catches Yondu's arrow and tries to use it on T'Challa, but Yondu gets in the way as the arrow pierces him and finishes him off. Ultron prepares to end T'Challa, but then is sent flying by both Steve and Danvers as they begin fighting him. Most of both the Wakandan and Sorcerer army has been killed as the bots begin to help Ultron and fight Steve and Danvers. Tony finds the other stones and adds to his suit as he is met with Rhodes as they try to think of a plan, but Tony is scared and doubts himself as he looks over to see all the death and destruction he has caused. As he looks down, but he doesn't know what an Ultron bot is behind him, prepared to take its life. Rhodey sees this and moves Tony out of the way as he takes the blade to the chest for him, as Tony screams out no, blasting the bot as he goes to Rhodey apologizing as tears swells up in his eyes. Rhodey, with the last breath he has, tells Tony that he has to end this and save the universe to make things right, as Rhodey dies in Tony's arms. Tony gears up, prepared to end this. Danvers and Steve begin to be taken over by the army, but with a combined blast, they are able to eliminate all of the army, but leaves them tired as Ultron easily is able to kill both of them swiftly. Tony arrives, and then it is a one-on-one fight. They begin their brawl as they both use the stone they each have to gain advantage in the fight. Tony being able to reverse any damage he takes from Ultron, using the Space Stone to maneuver around the place to try to get the drop on Ultron in the fight, and using the Reality Stone to avert any attacks into nothing. Ultron begins to get irritated, using the Power Stone to heavily damage Tony's suit, and before Tony can use any of the stones, Ultron rushes him down and rips off all the stones and puts it on himself. With Ultron now having 5 Infinity Stones, all that's left is a broken Tony and T'Challa as he tells them that he pities them, and instead of ending their suffering, he will let them live to always remember their failures that they are. Ultron will continue with destroying most of the planets and life forms, as he will leave to destroy other forms of life in space. T'Challa and Tony are left to ponder what to do now. T'Challa is mad at Tony, as they argue, saying that if Tony listened, none of this would have ever happened. And now they have lost everyone. Tony looks down, not being able to say anything. T'Challa will begin to bury the fallen to give them a funeral, and Tony will try to help out. During when they do this, they go their separate ways, both having to deal with this terrible loss in a new way of life. Man, talk about dark. Ant-Man and the Wasp does not happen. Captain Marvel stays the same, and Avengers Endgame. Many years have passed ever since the battle with Ultron. Tony and T'Challa did live their separate lives, as they never made up. Tony lived in major guilt, as he blamed himself, and had many nightmares of the events that occurred. He spent his time in the hidden Avengers base, and mainly working on his suit. He created Model 63, his Godbuster armor, just as a way to kill time, but he does want to make the suit as strong as it can be because Tony has been planning a way to make things right, only so that his conscience is clear. He plans to create a time machine in order to go back in time to aid the past version of himself to defeat Ultron. Then he remembers something important about Thanos' plan on erasing half of the universe with the 6 Infinity Stones, but Ultron only ever had 5 stones. He finishes his suit and his plan on the time machine, and he then would head to Wakanda, where T'Challa stayed. During his years of being alone, he tried his best with clearing out the battlefield, but was surrounded by many deceased bodies. T'Challa would use vibranium to upgrade his suit and tech, and since he is the only one alive, he can use up all of it, but he too would also try to find a way to fix this problem, but to no avail. He would hear Tony coming, and still being upset at Tony, but Tony would explain to T'Challa, as T'Challa sighs but tells Tony that he knows where the last stone is, but he kept it to himself, in case someone ever tried to collect them all, as he did fix up the Ravager ship. They began heading to the planet Vormir. During their journey, they had a chance to fix up their friendship, as Tony apologizes about his mistake, and now it cost everyone their lives, and then he promised T'Challa that he would do anything to make things right, even if it cost him his life. They would arrive and be met with Red Skull. Red Skull appears. Tony Stark, son of Howard and Maria Stark. T'Challa, son of T'Chaka and Ramonda. Tony asks Red Skull where they can get the Soul Stone, as Red Skull explains that to get the Soul Stone, it would cost a soul for a soul of someone you love. Tony and T'Challa look at each other knowing that one of them has to die in order for the other one to be able to beat Ultron. Tony instantly goes first, saying he should be the one to do it, but T'Challa stops him, saying that just tossing his life away will make things right, as he needs to make sure that Ultron is defeated, and the past versions of themselves need the smarts of this Tony in order to beat Ultron. T'Challa will let Tony's suit absorb the vibranium, as Tony's suit will become even more powerful, as with the advanced tech and better durability with this vibranium. T'Challa will grab Tony's shoulder, as he tells him that he forgives him, and he doesn't have any ill will towards him, as he tells him that he believes he will make things right, as he would walk slowly to the cliff and fall off, as Tony looks away, but when he looks back he sees the Soul Stone as he absorbs it into his suit, as he would return back to Earth, quickly, hoping he won't meet up with Ultron. Ultron would have sensed the increase in power on a certain planet, as he would use the Space Stone to teleport to the planet and see Red Skull, asking him where the power came from. Red Skull would tell him that the Soul Stone was already taken, and Ultron would know what it was, as he grew very angry as he would teleport to Wakanda, but wouldn't be able to sense anyone. At this point, Tony's already at the secret base of the Avengers, and he would start up his time machine and head back in time to before Ultron arrived originally. President Ultron would get an alert, as he would blast through finding Tony's time machine. Tony would arrive back in time and will be met with both Strange and the Ancient One, as he would explain the situation, but they would say that they already know, as they use the Time Stone to look through all the versions of where they win, and the one that they saw where they win as Tony coming from the future, as this shocks Tony and asks why they didn't tell them back then, and Strange explains that if they did, it wouldn't have happened. By the way, to tell the difference between the two Tonys, we would call the older Tony future Tony and the past Tony just Tony, in order to not cause any confusion. Tony would then collect the 3 Infinity Stones from the past and infuse it with his armor. He will see everyone, and Strange would explain the situation. Tony is fascinated seeing his future self and asks him what happened in his future, but future Tony remains quiet and stayed in his suit. Then they will be notified that the barrier has been breached, as future Tony instantly flew towards Ultron, this time being prepared to face him. Ultron would see Tony fly towards him in quick speed, and future Tony would begin beating on Ultron, and this version of Tony, with much more advanced tech, is beating on Ultron with ease, not letting Ultron having a chance of fighting back. Quickly, Tony takes the last 2 stones from Ultron and destroys the past version of Ultron, which would destroy all the Ultron bots. Tony sighs in relief as he absorbs the last 2 stones. Note, Tony's suit is able to distribute the energy around the suit, so Tony is fine handling all the stones. Future Tony would head back to the ground, saying everything is fixed, but then Strange says that this future won't change, because of this is not how time travel works, sadly. Tony looks down sadly, but he says he knows what he must do. But then the sky begins to break, as everyone looks up, to reveal that future Ultron arrives, telling Tony that it was a mistake, leaving him and T'Challa live, as now he would correct it, and kill everyone in this universe. Future Tony grew a face of fear, but would change at Ultron fighting him, and this battle is close, but Ultron having the upper hand, as both of these two grew in strength. Tony would try to snap, but Ultron would rip off the suit, and tear off one of the arms of the suit, and begin to damage Future Tony. Future Tony's suit would repair itself, and their fight would continue, but since Tony lost the Power Stone, he is on the losing side. This version's Avengers create the plan of getting the Power Stone to Future Tony, so that he could end Ultron, so some of the powerhouses like Strange, the Ancient One, Captain Marvel, and Captain America would try to hold Ultron back, but they didn't last long. But it gives Future Tony time to recover and head over to the Power Stone. The Avengers would all gang up on Ultron, giving Future Tony as much time as they can. Future Tony would find the Power Stone, but he took so much damage that his suit could no longer repair itself, as he remembers what T'Challa said, as he says whatever it takes, as he is about to grab it, but then the other Tony would arrive, saying that they could end it together. Both Tonys would each have 3 stones, as they both, with a combined effort, use the stones to completely destroy Ultron, and take away the stones he had. Ultron, all beaten and destroyed, would try to get back up, but would be put down by T'Challa with a finishing blast from his pistols. Future Tony would fall over, being hurt, as his suits would release this timeline's stones. He thanks everyone for his efforts, as Strange said that it was him saving them all. Tony would form his suit to form into a glove that contains all his timeline stones, as he prepares to leave, but before he would head to T'Challa, to give him a hug, to apologize to him for the destruction he caused, and ask him not to hate this version's Tony, as T'Challa said that he does forgive him, and doesn't have any ill will towards him. This makes future Tony shed a tear, remembering his T'Challa, as he travels back to his timeline. Looking around, he sees nothing but destruction, but not only here, but everywhere, as he would decide to use all the stones to snap everything out of existence, in order for the universe to reset itself. As he does so, absorbing all of the stones, he falls over in pain, as he gets his 2 fingers in order to do the snap, as a white light flashes over engulfing everything, as we see the empty nothingness. All else is gone, besides the 6 stones floating in the deep dark. Well then, a bittersweet ending, if I do say so myself, of What If Marvel's What If continued. Avengers. Now, as we saw in episode 9, we caught a glimpse of what was happening in the timeline after the Watcher dropped off Nat from episode 8 in What If Ultron won. We saw her put Loki in mind control with a scepter, as this version of Nat already went through the events of the Battle of New York. Now this battle is different from the Chitauri invasion, as Thor never happened, so Loki would never meet with the Titan Thanos. This invasion happens with his Guardians, but with Sif and the Warriors 3 trying to stop it, as they do not agree with Loki's tactics. With them, Steve Rogers, Captain Marvel, Natasha, and all of the S.H.I.E.L.D. trying to fight off this attack. While the fight is going on, we hear a rumble of thunder going all across the sky. The heroes begin to get overrun, but then massive thunder strikes down, surrounded everyone, as Odin has come to stop this invasion. He forces his army to hold his attack and return to Asgard. Odin would appear in front of Fury, asking for the body of Thor so he can bring it to Asgard. Before he left, Odin raised his hand and summoned Mjolnir as it flew into his hand. Odin, saddened by his son's death, wonders what he would do with the hammer now. Fury apologized for Thor's death, as he did not mean to cause all of it, as he just wanted Thor to be in the Avengers Initiative. Odin senses someone who could be worthy of the hammer. He looks over to Steve as he asks him to come here. Odin passes the hammer to Steve, as Steve is worthy to wield the hammer. This stuns everyone, as it also impresses Odin. He asks Steve to come along to visit Asgard, as Steve takes a second to answer, but Odin offers that Midgard will be under his protection for as long as he lives, which put everyone at ease. Steve goes to Asgard and experiences the place, which he finds very fascinating. On Earth, Fury tries to convince Danvers to stay, as they are in a lack of heroes, but Danvers apologizes, saying that she still needs to protect other planets, but if he calls, she will answer. Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, and Captain America the Winter Soldier. Fury thinks that he needs to still come up with the Avenger Initiative, with new people. So far, he has Steve and Natasha, but he has to recruit more people for any future threat. Now, Nat being from the short future, she warns Fury about Hydra being inside S.H.I.E.L.D., and they stop the events of Winter Soldier much earlier, and are able to capture Bucky. Nat also tells Fury about the events of Iron Man 3, which they will also stop with the new help of the newest Avengers, War Machine, and Sam Wilson, Falcon. With those 3, plus some aid with Sif and the Warriors 3, they manage to stop Adrian Killian and his plan. After that, Nat also tells the Asgardians about the events of Thor the Dark World. Sif and the Warriors 3 will report back to Asgard and warn Odin about the elves still being alive. Now, there is still time before the convergence, but an important thing is that Jane Foster isn't a big role in this timeline, because of the early demise of Thor, so they would have to wait till the convergence to occur, and then have someone to go into the portal, to have the Aether host another body. They would return to Asgard and remove the Aether from the host to contain it. Then the elves would attack, but this time having Asgard more prepared, and are able to fight off the attack with the help of Steve replacing the role of Thor. In this battle, they are able to kill Malekith and prevent the death of Frigg. Once the Aether is secured, they bring the Aether to the Collector, as normal, because they do not want to have 2 Infinity Stones too close to each other. Odin thanks Natasha for helping Asgard to prepare for the attack of the elves, telling her she is always welcome to Asgard, and he gives Black Widow the scepter to be her weapon. At this point, Steve would also stay on Earth because he wanted to see Bucky. Guardians of the Galaxy. That stays the same. Avengers Age of Ultron. So there is no Ultron, so no Avengers movie. Plus no Maximoff twins. So far there's been peace on Earth for a while. Ant-Man. Scott Lang just kind of has a sucky life since there's no Hank Pym or Hope in this timeline. So sadly Scott just has to live a poor life. Unlucky. Captain America Civil War. Now, there is no civil war to occur, as most of the destruction of the cities never happened, and no Crossbone as he was subdued much earlier, but we will use this time to catch up on our Avengers team. Now at this point, Bucky is trusted to be an Avenger, which some people have trouble trusting him, but Steve believes in Bucky. Most of their gear is upgraded with the help of Asgard. Currently, they have Steve, Bucky, Falcon, Nat, and War Machine. Sometimes Danvers, Sif, and the Warriors 3, if they're on the planet, but ever since 2012, the Avengers haven't had any major battles since then. Also no Zemo, as the events of Age of Ultron never occur, so Civil War is prevented. Doctor Strange. That stays the same, but in the end, Strange is met with Fury, and Steve, as he is recruited to be an Avenger. Strange isn't too sure, as he jokingly says that he doesn't want to join no boy band, but Fury explains that they need more members to join, so that if any battles occur, the Avengers will be there to help and stop it. Strange sighs as he says that he will think about it. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 stays the same as well. Spider-Man Homecoming. Peter is still Spider-Man, and it really just stays like that. No Tony means he wasn't recruited to be in Civil War, so Spider-Man mainly was in his homemade suit, until he made a better suit similar to what he has in the end of No Way Home. He doesn't have Tony as his mentor, so he is mostly on his own for most of his superhero life. No Vulture as there is no Battle of New York, so he really just dealt with a low-level crime, really sticking to being a street-level hero, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, if you will. But one day, he is met with Nick Fury. Now, Fury is hesitant about recruiting Spider-Man, as he knows he is still a child, but since he is sort of desperate for heroes, he decides to take Spider-Man to becoming an Avenger, with the help of the other members. Thor Ragnarok. That doesn't happen as Odin doesn't pass away, so no Hela. Plus Thor and Hulk are both dead, but don't you worry Hela fans, this doesn't mean she is out forever. Black Panther. Now this movie still happens the same, more or less, besides the fact that T'Challa's dad is still alive, but the movie still focuses on T'Challa. T'Chaka will be killed off by Killmonger after T'Challa gets beaten, so when T'Challa and Killmonger have their rematch, T'Challa would have no problem with killing Killmonger, as he would not reveal to the world about the truth of Wakanda. Nick Fury has been watching footage of the Black Panther in action, and he would like to recruit him, but still has no leads on his location. Avengers Infinity War. Now, Thanos will never retrieve the Space Stone, as Asgard is still intact, but he will not attack Asgard at this moment. He would retrieve the Reality Stone with ease, but the good thing is that he doesn't have his Gamora yet, as the Guardians haven't been notified about Thanos' plan, so in this timeline, they aren't too big in this movie. The Black Order will be sent to Earth, as the Avengers would assemble to fight off the 4 members of the Black Order. Now, even though this is a smaller group, with being not as strong as the original, but with their tech being upgraded with Asgardian material and actually being assembled, they are able to manage to beat the Black Order, with some struggle, but manage to be victorious. Fury has no hesitation to call Danvers, and once she arrives, they all head to Asgard with the Infinity Stones that they have. T'Challa sees this, but decides not to interfere, as this doesn't involve anything to Wakanda. But boy is he wrong! The Avengers arrive at Asgard with Peter freaking out to be in such a place, and the Avengers tell Odin about Thanos' plan. Odin does say that this could be a problem, with the Mad Titan being an Admir's foe to fight against, but he does agree that they must stop him as they prepare. Thanos realizing that his Black Order is dead, he prepares to take his army to Earth, but then a bright light appears nearby, as it's the Avengers, Odin, and his entire army on Titan. Thanos is shocked seeing Odin and asks him if he is here to stop his plan. Odin says that he must be stopped, once and for all, with Odin fighting against Thanos and the Avengers and Asgardian army fighting against Thanos' army. This battle is intense, as it causes major destruction, but with the Avengers on the winning side. Odin is having trouble against Thanos, as Odin is in his older ages. Plus, Thanos has the Power Stone. Thanos will take away Odin's weapon and stab him in the shoulder, ready to kill him, but then is interrupted by Steve Rogers, wielding Mjolnir, fighting against him with the aid of Sif and the Warriors 3. Danvers, and Doctor Strange. They all team up on Thanos, fighting against him, as Odin gets up, stabbing Thanos in the chest, giving him a fatal wound. Thanos stands there bleeding, as he smiles, saying that he did fail, but he will take Odin with him, as he pulls out his blade, stabbing Odin in the chest, which does kill him. Steve is upset, screaming out no, as he throws the hammer at Thanos, which hits him in the head and sends him flying, and ends up killing him. Steve, Sif, and the Warriors 3, and the Asgardian army all surround Odin, as his last final breath was to leave before Ella arrives. Wait. They're all confused, but once Odin disappears, Hela appears in front of everyone, as she gives off an evil smile, as she says she is the ruler of Asgard, but no one knows who she is, as they begin to attack her. Hela with ease kills off most of the Asgardian army. Falcon tells Steve that they have to retreat, but Steve says that they shouldn't, as he throws the hammer at Hela, but she catches it and destroys it with her hand, and this leaves Steve shocked. The Avengers try their hardest to fight off against Hela, but they all start to fall one by one. Even with some of the powerhouses like Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel, they do not stand a chance against Hela, as even Thor, Hulk, and Loki couldn't even beat her. Sadly, Hela manages to kill off everyone, as she is the last one standing. She would return to Asgard with 5 Infinity Stones and take over all of Asgard, killing mostly everyone. She will begin to take over of all the 9 realms, and when she arrives on Earth, Wakanda would try to fight against her, but they wouldn't stand a chance and be killed off. But hey look, Baby Groot. Okay, yeah, I know, it's a dark ending, but most likely that's how it would play out in the end. We lose some of the most important heroes in the first phase of the MCU. Without Thor and Hulk, they wouldn't have been able to prevent Hela from being killed off in Thor Ragnarok. Tony was a big piece of the Infinity Saga. I mean, he was the big brain of the whole entire saga, and the one to end Thanos originally. And without Hawkeye, they were bound to lose, obviously, as he was the strongest Avenger. Yeah, but that's where we leave off this episode.
Oh God.
The 5th episode of What If, we witness the big change of events of a zombie apocalypse overcoming the world and taking many of our heroes. How would these changes in events affect the future timeline of the MCU, with having almost every hero being turned into flesh-eating monsters? What could this mean for the remaining heroes as they head off to Wakanda and have them faced with the zombified Thanos wielding the gauntlet? Now, we will go through this in 2 different ways, as we saw that it could end with a good and a bad ending. Let us discuss this future timeline of episode 4 of What If Marvel's What If continued. We will start off with the bad ending, as most likely this is the ending that would end up playing out. Also, most likely the Guardians and Thor are still humans, since it wouldn't make sense if they were still zombies, as Thanos most likely converted into a zombie once he arrived on Earth. So Thor, Rocket, and Groot will go to get Stormbreaker, while the remaining Guardians, plus Nebula, will be on Titan. In this, we will also state that in the last scenes, we see Hulk and Bucky. That is where they meet their fate. So with a small trio of Peter, T'Challa, and Scott head to Wakanda. When they enter Wakanda, they see that it has been overrun. T'Challa decides to use the Mind Stone by implementing it into his suit. This does give him an ever-knowing knowledge, and he learns about the 6 Infinity Stones, and explains to the others that their chance of getting everything back to normal. Peter asks where the other stones could be, and that is when a shocked face grows on T'Challa as he explains that they are here in Wakanda. They explore Wakanda and they see a zombified Thanos and a horde of zombies. Back to Thor. He gets his new weapon and prepares to head to Earth, but then Rocket gets a call from Peter stating that they must group up as they think Thanos will come back to his home planet. Rocket asks Thor to bring them to Titan, as most likely Thanos will be on his planet. They all head to Titan and group up with the Guardians. Now, this choice is what leads to the bad ending of the story. T'Challa would try to use the stones to stop the zombies from coming at them, but with Thanos having the stones, he's able to counter this plan as he uses the Space Stone to teleport to our heroes. Peter and Scott have to try their hardest to fight against Thanos, Scott and the cape will try to wrap itself around the gauntlet to try to remove it from Thanos' arm. Peter will try to web up Thanos as he almost got the gauntlet, but Thanos manages to break Peter close to him with his own web and takes a huge bite on Peter's shoulder. T'Challa and Scott screams out no, as Scott then pushes Thanos off of Peter, but with this, Thanos gets a hold of the cape and rips it into pieces. Scott falls to the ground and his head projection breaks as Thanos eats Scott. With T'Challa left, he tries to use the Mind Stone against Thanos as they form a beam struggle, but sadly T'Challa is defeated and turned into a zombie. Now with Thanos, with all 6 stones, he snaps half of the universe as planned. Back with our heroes, they feel the effect of the snap as Star-Lord, Drax, Mantis, and Groot all get dusted. Thor is angered, saying that they made the wrong choice as he, Rocket, and Nebula all get teleported to Earth. They land on Wakanda and are instantly surrounded by zombies as they are not aware of the events on Earth. Thor, in a fit of rage, instantly goes to find Thanos, leaving the other 2 behind. They are heavily outnumbered as Rocket would try to fly up and try to save Nebula, but she succumbed to the zombies. But Rocket tries to find Thor, but a portal opens up as Thanos' hand appears and grabs Rocket through the portal, eating him. Thor finally spots Thanos as he flies nearby to see him eating his friend, Rocket. This grows an almost fearful face on Thor, but he continues with his plan to kill Thanos as he throws Stormbreaker, but Thanos uses the Power Stone to fling the axe away, and Thor will try to fight Thanos hand to hand. Thanos will be trying to bite Thor, but Thor manages to dodge all of his bites. Thanos grows angry and launches Thor into a building. Thor gets up slowly as he sees a zombified T'Challa crawling out and grabbing onto his leg, trying to bite him, but Thor manages to stomp off the zombie T'Challa, smashing his head completely. He would fly over to Thanos with Stormbreaker, and they begin to clash once again. It looks like Thor almost has the advantage over the zombified Thanos, but then Thor is shot with what seems to be like webs, but it is made out of veins. A zombified Spider-Man shoots another vein web at Thor's face, which distracts him from the fight. This gives Thanos a chance to bite Thor and infect him with the zombie virus, killing humanity's last hope. Now, with the way of the good ending, we'll be keeping both Hulk and Bucky alive. Bucky surviving the fall, and Hulk ends up killing all of the zombies and doesn't get infected. They meet up and start heading to Wakanda. T'Challa will use the Mind Stone as usual, and then know that Bucky and Hulk are on their way to them. This changes their plan, as they now plan to hold off and regroup with them 2 before trying to face Thanos. Away back with Thor and the others, instead of them waiting for Thanos to appear on Titan, Thor forces everyone that they will head to Earth right away. Peter tries to fight against it, but Thor uses the Bifrost to transport all of them to Earth. Thor sees Hulk with a small group of people as he shows some relief. Thor and the Guardians meet up with T'Challa, Hulk, and Co trying to figure out a plan to stop Thanos. Thor gets angry as he tries to look around for Thanos, but T'Challa stops him and explains to him and the Guardians what had happened on Earth. Spider-Man, in a low tone as he's excited to see Thor in person, explains that they cannot let Thanos or any zombies bite them, or they will turn into a zombie themselves. So the group plots a plan all together to get the gauntlet and reverse this whole problem. T'Challa will use the Mind Stone to control the zombies. Thanos will notice this and head to T'Challa, but in this play of events, T'Challa had a lot more friends to help defend him. The Hulk will face Thanos head to head as they have a brawl once again. Spider-Man and Scott will try to move the gauntlet from Thanos, but they are thrown away. Thanos gets the advantage on Hulk and tries to bite him, but is stopped by Drax as he stabs him in the back. Then Thor will strike Thanos by cutting off his hand that has the gauntlet, as Quill says that it was pretty easy, but then it is revealed that it had all been an illusion by Thanos, as it was shown that he was behind Quill as he takes a bite and Quill becomes a zombie. The Guardians are saddened by their leader's death, but still decide to end him, so that he doesn't cause more problems. Drax would end Quill, but he hesitates for a moment, and this gives the chance for a zombified Quill to give Drax a scratch, also infecting him. Thor and Hulk will still focus on Thanos together. Nebula will be the one to end both Drax and Quill finally, while Thor and Hulk fight Thanos. Bucky gets the gauntlet from Thanos and manages to remove it as he tries to run back, but then is bitten by Thor, as he was infected when he was facing Thanos. Bucky realizing it's over for him, he tosses it to Spider-Man as he webs to T'Challa. With the now zombified Thanos, Thor, Hulk, and Bucky, they all start to chase after the remaining humans. Rocket, Mantis, and Nebula did not stand a chance against these zombies as they were infected rather quickly. Scott tells the Cape to go to Peter so he can make it to T'Challa as Peter begins to fly more quickly to T'Challa, but wasn't faster than Thor, as Thor took a big chomp on T'Challa. T'Challa tries to throw the Mind Stone to Peter, but doesn't throw it far enough. But then Groot appears, getting the Mind Stone and stretching his arm out to Peter as Peter grabs the Mind Stone and begins to fly far away. He puts the last stone in the gauntlet and then proceeds to put the gauntlet on, but then he feels a strong force holding him back, as if it was Thor. Peter grows scared trying to remove Thor from him, as then the cape wraps itself around Thor's face, as Peter begins to fall. He quickly puts on the gauntlet and feels the pain all around him as he tries to endure the pain and think of everything to be normal and not ever having a zombie apocalypse, as he snaps just before his body connects to the floor, as a bright light engulfs everything. Peter wakes up right back to being on the bus moments before the Black Order arrives on planet Earth. He searched up anything about zombies, but everything was normal. When Hank found Janet, she was just her normal self, so the entire zombie virus never occurs. Peter is glad that everything is normal, but he's the only one to remember about the events of the zombie apocalypse, and the rest of the events of Infinity War and onwards will play out as it did in the MCU. And that is going to be What If Marvel's What If Continued in episode 5. In the 6th episode of What If, we witnessed a big change of events with Killmonger saving Tony and preventing the creation of Iron Man and Tony's entire character arc. How would these changes in events affect the future timeline of the MCU, with having the biggest heroes in the entirety of the Infinity Saga? What could this mean for the other heroes as they have to face the future dangers and threats of Thanos without Tony's intellect and his tech? Let us discuss this future timeline of episode 6 of What If Marvel's What If Continued. Now where we left off with the story of Killmonger was actually taken care of by the Watcher, so with Pepper and Shuri, their assault on Killmonger would be underclimactic, as it would quickly finish and people would wonder where Killmonger went. But everything will go back to normal. Kinda. The everlasting effect still holds close to the US and Wakanda, as the world now knows the truth about the country, so they would still be against each other, but will be at a standstill for now. With T'Challa being killed, Shuri will be the next Black Panther. Now with her being smart comparable to Tony, Nick Fury does have interests in the people of Wakanda, with considering Shuri as a possible candidate for the Avengers Initiative, as she can definitely closely fill the boots for Tony. Iron Man 2. Now without the creation of Iron Man and the repulsor tech, Ivan Vanka wouldn't go looking for revenge against Stark, and be more glad that he is already dead. Most likely he would just stay at home, never becoming Whiplash. Also with Justin Hammers who would take over the weapon industries since Stark Industries has been taken over by the government. Thor would stay the same. Captain America the First Avenger would also stay the same, but Avengers will not. The story will go on similarly just without Tony. When they try to capture Loki, it will be a little more difficult without Tony, but they would manage, or at least until Thor arrives. Now this encounter will be a lot different between the two without Tony starting a fight with Thor. so they would head to SHIELD headquarters, and the Avengers would meet up. Now, one thing without Tony being there, the Avengers would not know the true intent of SHIELD, using the scepter to make weapons, but without Tony, their weapons would be more helpful for others. Also, there would be no argument since there is no Tony, so the team would still be united. But when it comes to the attack, the helicarrier would most likely crash, because without Iron Man, they won't be able to fix the carrier. So that would be done for, which would have major casualties. But we could say that the Avengers would have escaped, but then we continue with the Battle of New York. This would be a harder battle, with losing one of the strongest members, but the Avengers have already lost a lot, as they would fight back even stronger, being a stronger team. There would be more destruction, but overall would be a successful win. But when it comes to the nuke being sent, it would cause panic, as they don't have anyone who could maneuver it into the portal. Even with Hulk and Thor, they can't move the nuke into space. They believe it's over, but then they see a portal that opens and removes the nuke. They're all confused, but glad that the problem has been fixed. Now it's still close the portal, and that would end all the T'Challa invasion, and Loki would be caught. Iron Man 3. In this movie, nothing really happens. Killian would still create his plan in regeneration, but no one would stop him, and he wouldn't really reveal himself nor his true intentions, so he would stay low for now. Thor: The Dark World would stay the same. Captain America: The Winter Soldier would stay the same as well, but Nick would take action by requesting aid from Wakanda, and wanted to sign Shuri to become an Avenger as the Black Panther. Guardians of the Galaxy stay the same. Avengers: Age of Ultron. Now, Ultron wouldn't be created since Tony would never even come up with the idea. The Avengers would struggle to try to take back the scepter, but with the newest member of the Avengers, being a 17-year-old Black Panther, Shuri, she helps and manages to up the Avengers' technology. She would be the one to break in and take the scepter back. In turn, Shuri would be the one to get the nightmare into her head, and she would see her deceased brother, which would shake her, but would continue onward, but different from Tony. She would tell the others about Wanda's power. There also wouldn't be any Avengers Tower because, well, obviously Tony was the one paying the bills, and they don't have that no more. So with the aid of Wakanda, they managed to get a place built similar to the one they had at the end of Age of Ultron. Shuri would still be studying the scepter to gain more research on it, and maybe implement it to Wakanda's technology. They would have a little party as usual, but with the lack of Iron Man, but having the King and Queen of Wakanda at the party. And it would end normally without any Ultron attacking. So the main focus of this movie will be the superpowered twins, and the role they have with the Avengers would somewhat be a challenge, as the twins have much better powers, but with the numbers that the Avengers have, also knowing what Wanda can do with her powers so they can counter her powers, and with their teamwork, they will be able to detain them. Now, I believe they would join the Avengers team after a talk with someone like Steve, since Tony is dead and was never a part of the Avengers. They would have a good chance of becoming members of the team. The good thing is that Sokovia is all safe. Oh yeah, and Ant-Man would also stay the same. Captain America: Civil War. Now, this whole problem would be less of the problems the Avengers faced in the normal timeline. The Sokovia Accords wouldn't be a thing since Sokovia didn't fall to the ground, and Ultron wasn't ever created. So King T'Chaka would not get blown up, and Zemo wouldn't plot against the Avengers since he never lost his family. The only real problem is the sighting of Bucky. Steve, seeing this, will be really concerned. He wouldn't assemble the entire team, just a selected few. He would gather Black Widow, Falcon, Wanda, and Quicksilver. They would all go to where Bucky was sighted. Capturing Bucky would be rather easy and not have the police force trying to stop them. They will bring him back to the compound, but Bucky's still a bit on edge. But Steve believes in Bucky and would try to give him help. Doctor Strange. It will stay the same, besides the fact that it will be revealed that the Ancient One was the one that dealt with the nuke during the Battle of New York. Now yes, it is skeptical if the Ancient One would have helped out the Avengers if they failed to stop the nuke, but since the Ancient One was looking after Stephen Strange, as he was testing the power of Sorcerer Supreme, and would have a big part to play in the future, So I do see it possible that she would have dealt with the nuke in order to protect Strange, as he was in New York. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 would say the same. Spider-Man Homecoming. Now this will be a different movie. Spider-Man will be on his own and never really gotten any experience with other heroes. He would really be on his own dealing with the Vulture, and he would have some near-death experiences and would be on the news. Steve would be at the compound and see the Spider-Man on the news with his problems with the Vulture and would decide to help out Spider-Man. Steve would go out with Falcon and Wanda and meet up with Spider-Man one day. This would freak Spider-Man out with meeting the Avengers. Falcon would make fun of his crappy suit, but Steve changes the subject, saying that he wants to take Spider-Man to the Avengers and help out with his Vulture situation. Vulture would be taken down much more easily with the help of Cap, Falcon, and Wanda. At the end of the movie, Spider-Man will become an actual member of the Avengers. Thor Ragnarok. This movie will be drastically different, as Hulk never left Earth. The start will still be the same up until Thor fights Hulk, because well, we don't have a Hulk. So Thor will be the strongest on Sakaar, but he will still plan to escape. But I believe Thor and Loki will be able to escape, but barely, as the ship will take a lot of damage and basically be broken when they arrive on Asgard. But sadly, without the aid of Hulk and Valkyrie, there will be major casualties, as they have less fighters to protect the Asgardians. Thor will have a close battle against Hela, but he would barely survive long enough for Loki to bring Surtur, and Hela will have to fight off against Surtur, as Thor and the others would escape. Black Panther wouldn't happen, as all the events can't happen since, T'Challa and Killmonger are both dead. So, on to Infinity War. Now when Thor and the Asgardians, most likely the entire race, will be wiped out except Thor. Now a big problem is that the Avengers will not be warned by Bruce, so Doctor Strange will not go looking for the Avengers. The spaceship will land on Earth, and seeing this, the Avengers would assemble to New York. With the aid of Doctor Strange, they will be able to take on 4 members of the Black Order. Not without its challenges, but they would stay on Earth and all rally to Wakanda to prepare for Thanos' attack. On space, the Guardians would go through the same as normal, but when they arrive at Titan, they would be wasting their time. The Battle of Wakanda would go on, but with Thanos being there at the start. And this would not be good for the heroes, as they are severely lacking in manpower, without having people like Iron Man and War Machine, but in turn, they have Hulk and Quicksilver. With the lack of the Black Order members and not having to protect Vision, they can focus on the fight, but with Thanos being there, most of the stones besides the Mind and Time Stones, Wakanda still have a scepter and their city. Thanos would work his way through the army using the various stones he has collected, taking down many heroes, and even blasting Doctor Strange and taking the Time Stone. With having but 1 stone left, he uses the Space Stone to teleport to the scepter, breaking it, collecting the final stone. He snaps his fingers, which erases half of life, erasing the same members as normal, and Quicksilver will be with the remaining members. Nebula would give up as she is left alone, and would go down with her life accepting the major loss. Sadly, Thor would arrive too late, as Thanos had an easier time to get to the last stone, so Thor would feel even greater shame not being able to deal with Thanos. This loss from the Avengers will be taken heavily, as some of them are really angry, like Quicksilver, Hulk, Thor, and many others. Sadly, even when Scott is released years later, they won't be able to create time travel, as without Tony's brains, the Avengers just have to accept their losses and move on with their new way of life. Any movies onwards happen the same, besides Endgame, as there won't be any time heist to collect the stones. Unfortunately. And that is going to be What If Marvel's What If Continued, Episode 6.
Thor Odinson, Crown Prince of Asgard.
In the 7th episode of What If, we witness a big change of events, with Thor being raised in a different way, being a lot less responsible and even more reckless than his canon counterpart. How would these changes in events affect the future timeline of the MCU, with having the strongest Avenger being a man-child? What could this mean for the other heroes as they have to face the future dangers and threat, with also having to deal with a party Thor? Let us discuss this future timeline of episode 6 of What If Marvel's What If continued. Thor. Now, this episode takes place around the time of the first Thor movie, and there are many big changes already. Loki being raised by frost giants, and them not going to war with Asgard, so the whole problem in the original Thor movie does not go as normal. Earth is more comfortable with knowing of alien life, so that whole thing is not a surprise for them in the future. Captain America, the first guy, that stays the same. The Avengers isn't a thing. There will be no threat that will make Fury assemble the Avengers, since Loki never felt betrayed by Thor, and that whole storyline wouldn't have happened, then he would never have met Thanos. Also, with Thanos, the Infinity Stones all have already been collected by Odin, and are safe on Asgard. So Thanos wouldn't make an assault on Earth, since there aren't any Infinity Stones on that planet. So the T'Challa invasion would completely be avoided, and Earth would be safe. And hell, who knows, Thanos might not even be a threat this entire part. Iron Man 2.5. Now, this version of Tony will never get PTSD, since he never had to go through a wormhole to shoot a nuke into space, which in turn would mean that he would spend most of his time creating multiple suits, and go crazy with having to be protected by his Iron Man suits. Another thing is that Tony would not leak his address so no one would attack his house, and he would not be stuck in Tennessee. The Ten Rings would still be a problem, no doubt, so with his more advanced red and yellow suit, he would find out about the Ten Rings and figure out about Killian's plan and stop it before it would come to fruition. Thor 2. That would not happen, since the lack of the Reality Stone, and since Odin has all 6 of the stones, most likely he would have found the Dark Elves and finished all of them off. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. That would most likely plan out the same, with little to no difference. So, on to Guardians of the Galaxy. Which doesn't happen. As the way of the group meeting was by trying to get the Power Stone, none of that would happen, so there is no Guardians of the Galaxy, just some random criminals. Avengers, Age of Ultron. Now, without the Avengers being formed together, there still won't be a need for them during the Age of Ultron, as, there's no Ultron. No Scepter, meaning no superpowered twins, Tony not having nightmares, so no Ultron plan, no Vision, as there's no Mind Stone on Earth either. Really, everyone is just doing their own thing. And Ant-Man stays the same. Captain America, without the Civil War. Now, there's no team, and nothing happened to Sokovia, so the heroes can still chill and do their own stuff. Bucky would still be spotted, and it'll just be Steve and Natasha to go capture him, so it should just be Captain America chasing Bucky. Doctor Strange. The movie will stay the same until the end, when they need the Time Stone to stop Dormammu. But they did not have the Time Stone, so things looked dire until Thor would arrive. Thor has been spending a lot of time on Earth, and with Jane, that it kinda became his home for the time being. He asks how he can help, mainly because he doesn't want to go back to Asgard, so he is willing to help Doctor Strange. Strange would say that he could possibly use the Time Stone to reverse all of this, and Thor left before Strange could finish his plan, and Thor came back with his father and the Time Stone. Odin begrudgingly uses the Time Stone repeatedly until Dormammu leaves. Thor thanks his father, but quickly leaves as he is arriving. Guardians of the Galaxy 2. That still doesn't happen as there's no Guardians, and Ego would have a harder time looking for his son Peter, as Quill is most likely either dead or caught in some jail. Spider-Man Homecoming. Now this movie will be normal. It'll just be Peter as Spider-Man, not really recruited by anyone. He does the little stuff, stopping no more crime, but no big threat, since Vulture can never be created without the Chitauri tech. He would stay on his own without anyone recruiting him, so Spider-Man would be his own hero. Thor Ragnarok would be avoided for now, as Odin would have aged less, since in canon, with his Time Stone on Earth, he did age a bit faster, without his godlike powers, so for now Hela would not be released. Black Panther would happen the same, just with King T'Chaka still being alive. Infinity War. So, it doesn't really happen. On Earth, at least. Thanos could try to invade Asgard, but would fail, as Asgard would have aid from many different armies, like the Frost Giants, to fight against Thanos, so his goal of erasing half of life would not happen. Ant-Man and the Wasp. That would stay the same besides the post-credits scene, since Hope and the others would not be snapped. Captain Marvel would stay the same. Avengers Endgame. With Endgame never happening, our heroes' lives has been nice to them. Tony still worked on his Iron Man suit and stayed being a hero, but also built a life with him and Pepper, and had their daughter Morgan. Steve, Bucky, Falcon, and Natasha all worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and became a special group for S.H.I.E.L.D. for any dangerous missions. But Steve will not return to his time and just spend his life with working for S.H.I.E.L.D., but he is happy with the friends he made now. Thor spent most of his time with Jane, and they ended up getting married and having their own child. Thor still somewhat remained the same as he did in the What If episode, but slowly is growing to become a more responsible adult, and with his new role of being the king of Asgard. Hulk remained hidden, and Bruce tried to stay on the low, with not bringing out Hulk, and hiding from the government. Hawkeye ended up retiring and spending the time with his family. Ant-Man would never have to go on house arrest, so he would keep working with Hank and Hope. Scott will be able to keep his relationship with his daughter, and work on being a better father. Spider-Man will keep doing his own thing, being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and he grew in popularity, as many people like Spider-Man. Peter continued to have a normal high school life, and kept his true identity of Spider-Man hidden. Doctor Strange would keep his title as Sorcerer Supreme, and even rebuild his relationship with Christine, and become a couple while keeping his work as Doctor Strange. T'Challa would end up becoming King of Wakanda, with his parents stepping down, and officially becoming the Black Panther. The Guardians of the Galaxy, on the other hand, are not the best of luck, for some of them at least. Rocket, Groot, and Drax will have a good life, doing their own thing. Well, I mean, I guess Drax would still be in jail, but yeah. Mantis would be stuck with Ego, and Nebula and Gamora would most likely met their fate when they went to war against Asgard. Now, yes, life has been relatively peaceful for our heroes, with Thanos not being a threat and being dealt with, and with the stones being secured on Asgard. It is all good for now until we have to continue this whenever the next saga of the MCU is completed. Our heroes have been living easy lives now, but would they be prepared to face any future threat, like Kang or Hela, without having to go through the hardships they faced originally, or even the Avengers that were being formed? Hopefully with this peace, they can still be able to face any future threat they might come to face in the future. And that is going to be What If Marvel's What If Continued, Episode 7.
And that would be it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the entirety of Season 1. And thank you for all the support you've been giving us. And we're just so grateful for that. Probably in the future, whenever, you know, the other sagas end, we will continue some of them that can be continued. And maybe do, if they ever do a Season 2 of What If, we'll do that as well. But thank you so much for watching. If you have any what ifs, leave it down in the comments down below, and we'll let you know what we think. Other than that, guys, we will see you all in the next video. Peace.